Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Reengineering the Chess Classic series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we are taking a look today at another stunning game played by the great Swedish player Gideon Stahlberg against the Belgian player Victor Ivanovich Soultanbeieff at Ostend 1936. Now Soultanbeieff, very interesting player, very interesting person as well. As you can imagine, he was of Ukrainian origin, but he lived in Belgium since 1921. He was born in 1895, learned chess at the age of 16 to 17, early chess life in Russia, and he was injured during service in World War I, had a pretty rough time and left Russia in 1920, and after many adventures ended up asking for asylum in Belgium in 1921, and he settled in Liège. His wife and son, his first son, joined him 1.5 years later, and his parents in 1924, and in 1923 had his first participation in the Belgian Championship. And well, he published a book in 1950 called Le Maître de l'Attaque, and with a foreword by Max Erver, no less. And he was a very, very interesting player. Many creative ideas, played a lot of correspondence chess and tried out lots of ideas there as well. And well, this book of 51 games, deeply annotated, and then some more extracts and miniatures, is really, really nice, and could thoroughly recommend it to any French speaker. And this game against Stahlberg was pretty nice too. So lots of twists and turns to it. So let's get down to it. So let's have a look how this game started. Quite a bit of interesting opening knowledge that will come in handy. So do bear with me with a few digressions. It will be worth it, I promise. Let's just go back to the start and see how this happened. So d4, d5, c4, c6, the Slav, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, d takes c4, and now a4. And this is the normal Slav position. And here black typically plays the move bishop f5. That's the most common line. Bishop g4 has also been played. Knight a6 has also been played. We've seen that a lot in the TCEC. But bishop f5 is the most common. However, in the 1920s and 1930s, e6 was quite popular. It was played a number of times in World Championship games, but not with very good success. If white was Alekhine, then basically Alekhine was going to win all the time. He beat Bogolyubov, he absolutely crushed him in the 1929 match. That's analysed on my blog as well. And he also defeated Max Erver very convincingly in 1935, I think it was. And the big problem was e4. This was what Alekhine was playing. However, as time has gone by, you know, players have sort of adjusted a little bit more to things, and this is actually now still quite popular in the modern day, this move e6. And then what players are playing is the move bishop b4. And well, Alekhine played e5 a number of times, scored very well with it. It's not supposed to be the best move. White's playing bishop g5 mainly nowadays, and then black is playing c5. And there's something quite peculiar and interesting about this position, because what we've actually done is we've transposed to a Vienna opening, but with white having played an extra a4, because actually black's played c6 to c5 in 2 moves, but white's response, you know, in a way to c6 was to play a4. And I'll just show you the Vienna, how the Vienna would look. That would be c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, d takes c4, e4, bishop b4, bishop g5, c5. As you can see, this would be the Vienna, and here we've got it with the extra move a4. So, you know, as always in these sort of things, the big question is, well, is a4 a help or a hindrance? Difficult to say. It stops black from playing moves like b5. On the other hand, it takes away a move like queen a4 check from white, which is one of the major lines normally in the Vienna. So Yeah, very, very complicated. I mean, this is a game, Grishuk against Jordan van Foreest in the World Team Championship Rapid in Düsseldorf in 2023. So yeah, you can see how current it really is. Well, Soultanbeieff didn't play bishop b4. He played c5. But after d5, which is the best response, we are into, again, a transposition, an opening where that's well known, but with the extra a4 for white. And that opening is the Queen's Gambit accepted. Let me just show you how that would come about. That would be the move d takes c4, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, c5, d5, e6, and then e4. And in our game, we've got the extra a2 to a4. So this is the big question. I mean, this line, when you do this, when you play this in the normal Queen's Gambit accepted, it's a little bit better for white, something like 0.5. That's what the engines give it. So, you know, definitely not the best line that black could play out of the opening. I mean, you know, if you play a Queen's Gambit declined, or you know, a bit more of a normal Queen's Gambit accepted, then you're heading for about 0.11 to 0.2 maximum. This is 0.5, but still not so bad for black. But does a4 help black, or is it a hindrance? Well, in this particular line, it turns out that it's a hindrance. Actually, being able to stop black from playing b5 is kind of key. And after d5 in this position, the engines are giving plus 1.56 already. Wow. And what's the reason for that? Well, the reason for that is that after e takes d5, e5, knight e4, in this position, white can play the move knight takes d5. In the Queen's Gambit accepted, that's not so great. Black can play b5, hold on to his pawn, and follow up with checks. With the pawn on a4, you're stopping b5, and this turns out to be really good. The bishop takes on c4, and this knight on e4 is feeling rather lonely and exposed there. However, the beautiful thing is that Soultanbeieff didn't actually have the idea of taking on d5 with the pawn. He had something much more spicy up his sleeve. And that was the incredible idea, knight takes e4. And after knight takes e4, he wanted to play the move e takes d5, knight c3, and then bishop e6. And wow, what is this position? Well, it's a really interesting one. I mean, black's got 3 pawns for the piece. This pawn mass, and it looks pretty threatening. I mean, you know, these pawns could advance, d4 chasing away the knight, d3 if the white bishop's on e2, and, you know, it kind of looks like black get a lot of play. I mean, the fact that white's played a4 here, you know, to me, I was trying to work out, is it good or bad? I mean, you're stopping b5, and b5 is obviously quite a tempting move for black, you know, to sort of get the pawns rolling, provide more support, to get that whole mass of 5 queenside pawns on the way. On the other hand, having played a4, it does mean that the black knight has got a nice square on b4. And actually, even if knight comes to d4, it's got a square on b3 here. So, you know, you could imagine this also being a bit of a downside for white, having played a4. The weird thing is that the engines are already saying plus 2.85, you know, for white. So they think that this is really, really good. But from the human point of view, this looks quite worrying. Now, where did Soultanbeieff get this idea from? Was it just his own inspiration? It most probably was. But there is one amazing predecessor. And that is just in the Queen's Gambit accepted move order that I showed you. And it's a game Labatt against Capablanca from some sort of simultaneous or casual game played in New Orleans in 1915. And Capablanca played against, I think, just an American amateur, and actually lost the game. I'm kind of wondering whether this is really true somehow, but seems to be. But this was quite likely unknown to Soultanbeieff. The time when I saw it was again through the Queen's Gambit accepted move order. So this position here, and it was the game Mikhail Tal against the Hungarian player Tibor Karolyi and in Tbilisi in 1986. And that was, yeah, a very interesting game. Tal won it, but yeah, it was pretty unclear somehow. But yeah, back in 1936, I think Soultanbeieff probably thought this up by himself, and Stahlberg has to work out all by himself with probably no prior knowledge of anything that looks anything like it, and has to work out, you know, what to do here. And actually, he did pretty well. What all the white players have figured out, the white players that played against this, is that the move knight g5 is very important. White rather has to get rid of the light squared bishop, because that then means that these pawns will find it a lot harder to advance. Once this light squared bishop is gone, if you go d4, then the pawn on c4 will be hanging. And, well, that's what Stahlberg did, and it's a very good idea. So knight c6, and now Stahlberg played it slightly inaccurately. The best thing to do, and this was also what white players discovered against the Queen's Gambit accepted, was that you should play takes and then the move g3. What does this do? Well, first of all, if black goes bishop d6, you're protecting your king, first of all. There's not going to be any attacks there. And secondly, this bishop can come out to h3 and attack the pawn on e6. And this is the most elegant way of attacking the pawn. It's the quickest by far. And, well, I mean, the engines, you know, really think that this is very, very strong indeed for white. What Stahlberg did was not bad, just slightly less elegant. He played the move bishop e2, and Soultanbeieff played the move knight d4. He played this against Stahlberg, and also a year later in a couple of correspondence games with which he kept on trying out his idea. Knight takes e6 was played by Stahlberg, a decent move. F takes e6, and then castles. Now the engines actually want to play the move knight b5 very quickly, and you can see that this is a nice point to the move a4. They just want to get rid of this knight on d4 as quickly as possible, and the idea is that if you go knight b5, a b5, this is quite nice for white because the rook is, you know, active attacking the a pawn. The other big advantage of having played a4, and we're going to see this, is that the rook can activate a3 to g3 or h3. And, well, join in both the defense of the white king side and also the attack of the black king side. I mean, the engines, you know, don't see any trouble at all to this for white, but, you know, you can be pretty sure that this was pretty stressful for Stahlberg to deal with over the board. So bishop d6 was played. Soultanbeieff says in his book Le Maître de l'Attaque that he considered a6, but this was refuted by I think a Russian player called Rivkin, who said that after bishop g4, bishop d6, you could play bishop e6, and indeed this seems to be quite strong. Takes queen d5, knight d4, bishop g5, and then you're coming in with rook e1, and the black king's just caught completely in the center there. He also tried the move bishop e7 against in a correspondence game against a guy called Dufosse. And, well, I'll just show you the game quickly. It's not in any databases. It's also not played perfectly. Queen d7 here. And the engines point out the lovely little tactical point. Maybe just if you want to stop the video, you could give yourself a tactical test. It's the move knight takes d5 with the idea queen takes d5, bishop e6. Ooh, the pain. Knight takes e6 allows queen d5 there. Very nice. White didn't spot that, despite it being a correspondence game, and the game continued as follows. You can see why I'm going to show you. It's just rather beautiful. The engine's already thinking that black's pretty much fine here, and you just see the pawns coming down like Space Invaders. b5 coming in now, b4, knight e2, knight f3 check, and here black found the lovely move d4, and well, that's one of the biggest pawn masses I've ever seen. Looks like just like a Botvinnik system of the semi-Slav somehow. And Soultanbeieff won quite quickly afterwards. You know, you just queen f4 takes, knight c1, and then took the bishop, Rook came around the h-file and mate followed soon afterwards. So yeah, I mean, you can see that the Soultanbeieff was really keen on this idea. He kept on playing correspondence games in it somehow. But he played bishop d6 and bishop g4 was played, queen f6, and now knight b5. You've got to give it to Stahlberg. He was finding, yeah, all the reasonable moves. Not quite in the most elegant way. You know, bishop e2 to g4, a little bit less elegant than g3 and bishop h3, but still, you know, good moves here. Knight b5 and a takes b5. Soultanbeieff said that he was thinking about playing castles. He also played this in a correspondence game, but he was, you know, quite unsure about it. Yeah, I mean, the engines like rook e1, rook e8, knight takes a7, and knight b5, and yeah, they just think that well, that, you know, this is going to be good for black in the end. But I don't know. I mean, you can you know, start sacking pawns with h5, you know, and play e5 to e4. Might have been an interesting way of playing, because it's not easy for white to get at the black king that way. But in the game, he took and played castles here, and now Stahlberg played the move f4. The engines are not completely keen with that. They like the move rook a3. Just getting the rook active here. You can play rook f3, or you can even play rook h3 if you need to. And you know, you're keeping an eye both on the a7 pawn, and you're also, you know, making sure that that your king gets all the cover. It's not 100% easy for you know, for white to break through quickly against the black position, but it's just, without light squared bishop, it's just very hard for black to advance these pawns without getting them attacked. Basically, you know, you go d4, then white can, you know, attack this pawn on c4 with moves like queen a4, for example. So yeah, just in principle, it's not going to be easy for black to do much in this position. With f4, well, Stahlberg sort of gave a target, I suppose, and well, Soultanbeieff just went for it with g5. No subtlety here. And well, I mean, there are all sorts of ideas that white could play here. The engines like queen e2 here, threatening e6, and after rook e8, just playing g3 just to keep it all together, and that was working out pretty well. I mean, actually, to be honest, f takes g5 is possible. You know, Soultanbeiff's idea was to take like this and play rook takes f1, but the engines are pretty confident that bishop e6 and bishop d5 is winning. The point being that, you know, Soultanbeieff said, well, rook d8 maybe, but we don't worry about this bishop on c1. We just go rook a7, rook c1, bishop e4 check, and then just b6, b7, and yeah, the pawn's just going to queen. So I mean, that would actually have been a pretty clear way of winning somehow. Stahlberg didn't dare do that. He played rook e1, rook e8, and now took on g5, just avoiding that. And I mean, in principle, you're taking another pawn with tempo. You're going to be attacking the pawn on e6 after. I mean, what can be wrong with this? Well, queen f2 was played, king h1, and now the move d4. Yeah, just trying to stop this bishop from developing, and hoping for something like queen h4 in the future. And of course, you know, there's a bit of a weak back rank here as well. But yeah, you know, I mean, it's hard to believe that that white should have enough here. I mean, there's plenty of ways of playing. Stahlberg suggested after the game bishop e3, and the engines like this. Obviously, d takes c3 allows queen d6, and after queen b2, the engine's just like bishop g1 here. You're sort of blocking the back rank, you're protecting h2, and then you're threatening e6. I mean, these pawns look threatening, but they're a very long way away, and well, this king's going to be a bit weak. We can also get our rook active with rook a7 if we want. Chances would be very, very good. The engines also mention the move g3, just yeah, just sort of stopping queen h4 and just getting ready to develop afterwards. You're threatening a move like queen e2, for example, just to swap off the queens. But Stahlberg kept on going with g6. I mean, I guess the idea was that if hg, he wanted to play a move like bishop g5, you know, get the bishop developed, stop queen h4, and you're still threatening stuff like bishop e6 check now. But Soultanbeieff just rolled the dice again and played the move h5. So with the idea that bishop h5, queen h4 is really, really dangerous. Threatening mate, and after g3 we just go bishop takes g3. And then you can't cover h2 because queen h5 is just winning. So Stahlberg played the move bishop h3, and that looks pretty calm. The engines actually want to throw in g7 first, in actual fact, just to just to open up the king just a little bit more. But bishop h3 looks quite reasonable. And now maybe stop the video and see whether you can work out the move that Soultanbeieff played next, because it's a pretty it's quite a stunner, I have to say. It's not winning or anything like that, but it must have made Stahlberg just fall off his chair. What Soultanbeieff came up with was the move rook f3 here. Wowsies! Well, obviously gf is met by queen takes h2 mate. Queen f3 is met by queen e1, and we're just threatening the move rook takes h3 in this position, because if g takes h3, then queen takes h2 mate. And if you play g3, then we just go rook takes g3, h takes, and queen takes g3. And well, actually mate is going to be impossible to stop here. If you go rook e2, I just go check, check, and then rook f8, and just bring the rook into play here. And if you go queen e2, I take the bishop, I give another check. This one's en prise, of course, so you can't play queen g2. And after king here, I go d3. You've got to go to d2, and then I go rook f8, and I'm coming in here. And it's just curtains. It is just absolutely curtains. So what on earth can white play here? Well, white's actually got two moves. There's the one that Stahlberg played, which is only good enough for equality, and there's the ones the engine play, which is completely winning. And you might want to stop the video here and give yourself a little tactical puzzle. The engine move, and this is quite stunning, is the idea bishop f4 in this position. So what's the idea? Well, we are protecting our back rank. So white is now threatening to play queen f3, and we're also blocking the attack on here, and we're also threatening bishop takes d6. But okay, you can play rook f4 here. What could be wrong with that? Well, we play the move bishop takes e6 check here. Fine, okay, we'll move the king out of the way. Nothing wrong with that. But now white plays the move rook e2, and this is kind of embarrassing somehow, because if you play queen h4, and it just seems completely unfair, white just has the move g3, forking the queen and forking the rook. So you're just going to end up with with extra material here. There's nothing that a black can do about it. So the best move that the black has got after rook e2 is to play rook e6. And well, the engines weren't 100% keen on rook f2, rook f2. So what they wanted to do was simply to take on e6 in this position. We're threatening queen h5 here. If you do anything too fancy, you've got to watch out for the back rank mate though. And after rook g4, then just queen g1. And after takes, well, it looks a little bit threatening with these three pawns, but the rook's protecting this, attacking this bishop, and we're even threatening rook a7 as well. So, basically, white's just doing really well in this position. Bishop f4 would have refuted this. Stahlberg played the move, he almost got it right. He played the move bishop e3 here. But then Soultanbeieff took with a rook on e3, and the engines are saying 0.00. Rook takes e3, and now there's even two possible moves here. Soultanbeieff sort of pointed out d takes e3, but he rejected it because he thought it would lead to a draw by repetition here. Queen takes d6, e2. Bishop takes e6, king g7, queen e5 check. And, Soultanbeieff gave king h6, which isn't exactly the best move. There's also just queen f6 in this position. Obviously, if you take off on here, then yeah, the bishop can't move because of e1 queen. And if you go queen e2, then queen e6, and Torch thinks that this is absolutely equal because queen h5 allows queen e1. So basically, black just ends up winning the pawn back. So that would have been possible, but Soultanbeieff was playing for the win. He went queen e3, queen takes h5, rook e7, and it just turns out really that White's position looks very threatening, but there's absolutely nothing that White can do to get mate. And at the same time, Black's got moves like queen e5, which are going to threaten to exchange off the queen because of the mate on h2. So how did things continue? Well, rook f1 was played. Queen e5 takes and takes. And actually the engines think that Black is a little bit better now. I mean, just at a cursory glance, the rest of the game didn't look, that interesting. It looked like Black was a little bit better. White was always going to hold with an opposite coloured bishop ending, d2, bishop e2, and we're just going to bring the king into the centre. But there was just one moment at the end that I suddenly thought, what a strange decision. And I didn't sort of think that it would have any significant difference. I just couldn't understand why on earth would White do that. But it turns out that it's actually kind of crucial. So king e4, king g6. Soultanbeieff wasn't very interested in the endgame, I think. So he doesn't give any comment in his book about this. Although I think he annotates it a little bit further in another source that's in the Stahlberg biography that I've been talking about. This is all happening. Black's got a pawn on d2. White's picked up some pawns. White's got the pass pawns on the king's side, but you're not going to be able to push those through somehow. King e4, g4, bishop g3. We force the pawns onto dark squares, and there we are, bishop f4, bishop d1. And everything's keeping itself in balance here, right? I mean, we've got the bishop, the dark squared bishop, stopping these pawns from advancing, and these pawns are sort of kept in check by these guys. So Soultanbeieff played the move a6, and I was sort of expecting b takes a6, b takes a6, king c5, and we'll get this pawn. You'll probably go and grab this bishop for this pawn, and we'll just have a king and bishop versus king position. Plenty of drawn games here from the engines. But Stahlberg played the move b6, which seemed really odd somehow. It was sort of the move where you sort of say, well, White hasn't really decided whether he's going to play for a win or a draw yet. Presumably all the emotion of the game somehow still in him. But in actual fact, it ended in a draw after the move bishop g5, king c5 threatened to come in. And Soultanbeieff played bishop e7 check, king there, bishop g5, king c5, bishop e7. Okay, Black could try to play the move king e3, and go after this, because, when you've played a6, b6 like this, Black does have a big passed a pawn now, so it's, and it's not one that White can easily stop. If White's going to start going after this b7 pawn, for example, then the a pawn will run. How are those races turning out? Well, these are turning out to be drawn. Let me just show you one example. I'll just show you how it goes. King c8, a5, g5. White's got to play this move very quickly. You've got to distract the bishop away from the b8 square and do it early enough. If Black can just ignore it later, then you're going to be in trouble. King e1, bishop b3, d1 queen, takes, g6, bishop h6, king b7, a4, king c8, a3, b7, a2, b8 queen, a1. And this is going to be a draw. White can give perpetual in any way he wants, and anyway, even if Black were to get queen and bishop versus queen, that's just an easy draw. So just at the end of it, if both kings dash, to make a queen like this, then it ends up being a draw. King e3, king d6 is just going to be a draw. There's plenty of lines, but that's the basic thing. Only Black isn't forced to allow this somehow. Instead of checking from e7, Black could actually play the move bishop f4 here and stop the king from coming into d6. Even, which is kind of serious, right? I mean, even more seriously, when White played the move b6, Black could have played the move bishop e3 in this position, stopping the White king from getting to c5. And White's in sort of zugzwang here because you're only going to worsen your position. If you play the king back to c3 here, then Black plays the bishop to h6. And after the king moves to c4, we play king e3 and we're a tempo up on what we had before, right? Instead of the king being on c5 and coming into d6, the king's on c4 and only coming into d5 and then coming into d6 and into c7. And this turns out to be really crucial. So if both sides dash for the pawn here, then a4, a3, bishop f4, stopping d8, h6, a2, a1 queen, stopping the pawn from queening. It's just really, you're just one tempo too late here in all sorts of ways. Plenty of variations there, plenty of sidelines and everything, but that's the basic problem. And if you do something like bishop c2 check, for example, I just go king f3 and, I'm going to get around the bishop quicker into this. You go bishop d1 check, I go king f2. You can't wait or anything like that because I've got unlimited tempi, and also, the black bishop can wait, and I've got a passed a pawn that's going to be coming. And the really amazing thing about it is that if you go something like king d5, I go king e2. Oh, sorry, wait a minute. If I go king d3 rather, I go bishop h6, bishop a4, I go king f2. If White tries to push the kingside pawns, then there's this amazing thing where it's just so difficult for White to push these pawns with the bishop behind looking. So, for example, if I play the move g6, I can play the move bishop h6. If you play the move h6, then I can just wait. For example, I can go d1 queen, takes and takes. And if you go g6, I'll take the pawn on h6. If you go h7, I'll play the move bishop d4, and White's gonna struggle to get the pawns past. You're gonna have to do all sorts of work, and by that time, my a pawn will already have queened. You just can't push your pawns through. You just can't work it out in that way, all sorts of variations. But basically, the fact that you can actually just gain a tempo, push the king away with this move bishop e3, or even you could have done it with bishop f4, and after, if you go king c4, then I go bishop e3, then you were just completely lost in this position after b6. So Soultanbeieff actually, even after this crazy move from Stahlberg, the move bishop e3, or the move bishop g5, king c5, and then bishop f4 instead of bishop e7, would have gained a crucial tempo and would have enabled him to win the game. Quite amazing, quite incredible. I mean, you can also try moves like h6, just chase away the bishop and try and get in. But then we go bishop f4, and if you go something like king d7, I can even go king d5 and then just come back and win this pawn, and then afterwards push my pawns. It's just absolutely incredible. You just cannot, you just simply cannot deal with this. So an amazing endgame. And again, it just shows, I'm often thinking, oh, well, the position's a bit dull. We've had all the excitement in the game. Let's just finish it and do the video. But yeah, it just shows the value of just letting the engines play out lots of stuff, even until the end of the game, because, well, the number of mistakes that we human makes in all these end games is quite incredible. And the things that the engines find are quite amazing. But yeah, sort of lain dormant for nearly 90 years somehow. But yeah, Soultanbeieff could have even won that game at that late stage. So there we are. I hope you're enjoying these old games. I'm enjoying going through them. I mean, I do love catching up with chess history, and I love the stories behind the games. And yeah, I mean, I love sometimes seeing that the games that ended, that are in all the books somehow, that they didn't quite end as they should have done, and that there were unexpected resources. Yeah, somehow in modern games everything gets engine analyzed straight away. There's not that much discovery, but in these games there's loads, and yeah, that's really nice to see somehow. But anyway, if you're enjoying the series, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, and otherwise, stay tuned. Got a few more Stahlberg games to come, and well, after that we'll maybe do something different. Not sure what, but might be something exciting, something openings, who knows. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next video.